Welcome to AstroTwins Radio, your cosmic GPS for life, love, and everything written in the stars. We're Tali and Ophira Edut, the AstroTwins, here to decode the astrology of the moment and help you navigate your destiny like a pro. Hey everyone, it is the week of August 10th to 16th. Tali here in Seattle.
Ophi in New York.
And eclipse season, let's go. So pretty busy week in the stars. Venus, the planet of love, peace, and harmony, justice, fairness, equality, equity, is doing a few little meetups, hosting a few summits on tour. Monday, trines Pluto in Aquarius and opposes Neptune in Aries. And then Tuesday will trine Uranus. So we got a little something to talk about there. Mars heads into Cancer from Tuesday, August 11th until September 27th. Was there for a really long time in the beginning of 2025 when it was retrograde in Cancer and Leo, and is back again for the first time in fall, its least happy position. Then we have total solar eclipse in Leo this Wednesday at 20 degrees, 2 minutes Leo. And that's the first total solar eclipse in Leo we've had since 2017, that August 21st eclipse, Goggles Day, the great American eclipse, where it was visible across much of the country. And then Saturday, a little meetup between Mercury, which is buzzy and data-driven, and outspoken Jupiter in flamboyant Leo. So tongues are already wagging.
So let's start with Venus, which is now in Libra as of last week. And it's got a long run through Libra and Scorpio for the rest of the year because womp womp, it's going retrograde in October, from October 3rd to November 13th. But before that, we've got Venus in its home sign of peace, love, and harmony, Libra, and justice. And that doesn't mean that we have instant love in the air, but it will reveal where love's in need of love today, to quote Stevie Wonder, another Venus-ruled Taurus.
And also kind of like where we need to find parity and how can we do it. So because it's at an early degree, many outer planets have changed signs. The outermost planets moved into new signs over the last couple of years. So they're all at very early degrees. We had the Barbo basket a couple weeks ago where everything was at 4 degrees. Neptune, Uranus, Jupiter, and Pluto. Jupiter's advanced along because it moves at a faster speed, but Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto are going to be at early degrees. So anytime a planet enters a sign, it's going to be kind of hitting all 3 of them in its early journey through. And that's what's happening with Venus. So, Venus in Libra trine Pluto, the, planet of the underground shadow worker, and opposite Neptune, the planet of illusions. Like, where have we had peace at any price? Where have we not been, looking at what fairness means? What does equity mean? A lot of people have spoken about equality, and unfortunately, MAGA, has done a real good job of taking down DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusivity. But equity is the idea that we aren't starting from the same place, from the same, due to racism here in the United States for generations and since slavery, certain groups have been able to build generational wealth, whether they were immigrants or white people whose families benefited from slavery or just, privilege over the years. So equity equity is on the table all over the place right now. Like, we're not starting with the same historical privilege and access to resources. So I think Venus and Libra trining Pluto and opposing Neptune, and then trining social change agent Uranus on Tuesday is going to be bringing that up again. Not that it's ever gone away just because the Republican Party tried to make DEI, you know, unfashionable. Approximately 600,000 Black women have been pushed out of the workforce or laid off since Doge and since Trump came back into office is what statistics are starting to show. So, you
Wow.
know, here we are, Venus and Libra. We're gonna
Yeah,
get right
Venus
into
is making, yeah, it's making contact with powerful generation shaping outer planets. Whether it's a trine, which is a flowing 120-degree angle, well, that means it's not good or bad. That's one of the things we always like to encourage our readers and clients when they say, is that good? Is that bad? Which I know when I'm getting a reading in a system, I don't know. I ask that question too. It's a desire to understand the energy. So it's powerful. So it's an energy of cooperation, a trine when things speed up. So Pluto is, alchemy and the unconscious, and Uranus is disruption, shock, and change. So will it ultimately maybe be in our highest good? Yes. Will it be comfortable? Not necessarily, because they're going to combine their energies. And the opposition is a tension, a tug of war, Neptune and Aries. Neptune and Aries, and Neptune is retrograde, has really been stirring the pot in so many places because they're strange bedfellows. Neptune is about escape and illusion and sort of that kind of it's the ruler of Pisces. It's that very delicate kind of energy, whereas Aries is more warrior, combative energy. So to have Neptune in Aries is these two disparate energies
well,
having
can really
to
lead
come
to
together. Yeah.
radicalization, indoctrination, extremism.
Yeah, because Aries is so it moves quickly, reacts quickly, and Neptune can be sort of a guru or someone who hypnotically puts a spell on you. I mean,
And also
these
compassion, like people's compassion
yeah,
has is at risk of being radicalized in every
yeah.
direction.
But Aries can also be innocence. In fact, it's similar to the Fool card in the tarot and in human design. The first Aries gate is the gate of innocence. It's a split of Pisces and Aries, and they actually share a quality in human design. Aries being the first sign of the zodiac can have like an innocent quality to it. So where is well-meaning compassion, but maybe, well, we'll talk about that in a little bit because this is a week where we are maybe being called to have that same level of passion and compassion, but also to become aware and informed of some of the nuances as well.
Well,
So,
yeah, the ruling planet of Aries, Mars, is heading into a new sign on
yeah.
Tuesday. It's heading into Cancer from Tuesday, August 11th until September 27th. And Mars is what's said to be in fall, according to the principle of essential dignities, which means planets love being in certain signs and hate being in others. And Mars does not love being in Cancer. It actually thrives, it's exalted in Capricorn, Cancer's opposite sign, and its domicile, meaning it's at home, in Aries. Now, the opposite of Capricorn is Cancer, so it's in fall in Cancer, is how we say it in astrology. And, that is a place where the Mars, like passion and percolating and let's get in there and fight, is getting checked by Cancer's desire to soften and sweeten and nurture everything. So there's this like, I actually think it couldn't have come at a better time. We have way too
Yeah.
much Mars energy going around, and Mars and Gemini, as it's been for the last 8 weeks, has been just a lot of bickering and fighting and jabbing. And we did a special episode about what's happening in the astrology community that you can listen to. But the topic of racism has been blown open within the astrology world now.
Which has a lot to do also with the nodes being in Leo and Aquarius and the upcoming total solar eclipse in Leo, because the South Node, which is the kind of the collective shadow, is the South Node, which is Leo, which is celebrity, guru, ego, when it's misused or being attention grabbing for the wrong reasons. The North Node, which is our karmic elevation that we're being called into as an Aquarius. Now, that doesn't mean that all things Leo are bad and all things Aquarius are good, but we're seeing Aquarius is very populist, socialist. We're seeing democratic socialism gaining traction. Um, Not surprising with that. But we're also seeing groups and communities, especially ones that had sort of a central figure and a really distinct hierarchy of power and privilege really going through a reckoning, if not a crumbling or collapse. All of a sudden, I mean, our algorithm is full of everything from the backlash against girl boss culture and marketing gurus. And, we see it in politics, the way both the Republican and the Democratic parties are splintering off and having, you know, people, is it the America First Party that, uh,
Marjorie Taylor Greene and Tucker. Yeah.
yeah,
I don't know if
Tucker
it's a
Carlson.
party per se, but
Right, but people are
it's a
forming their own subgroups and branching off and breaking away, and then the core group is doubling and tripling down on staying the way things always were, which I think also has to do with Chiron, the wounded healer, being in Taurus, which is very stubborn and traditional as well, and it's retrograde there now. So we are seeing a lot of things bubbling to the surface that were there, but in a very painful and ugly way for the last couple of weeks.
yeah.
And I
And it's
think Eclipse
happening,
comes in.
Mars and Cancer is like family feuds a little bit. Like
Yeah.
the family, and you may find that, it's interesting because
I was going to say, great
mom and dad
timing.
are coming to visit. Our parents they're going on an Alaskan cruise. So they're going to come and visit me beforehand this week in Seattle because everyone
This is why it's good to have
docks out.
astrology.
Yeah, I'm like Mars and
You
Cancer.
know,
The parents are
uh-oh.
coming. Yeah. Um,
Eclipse, the eclipse is on their wedding anniversary too on August 12th.
yeah.
So,
But you want to really do your best to kind of avoid things getting combustible. How can you
which will be
turn that?
harder with Mars there. Just so Mars is like putting kerosene on the fire. Mars inflames, aggravates, accelerates, pushes buttons. Mars is conflict and it's open conflict, whereas Cancer is retreating and withdrawing into the shell and maybe swiping out. So
Well, it's so
I
like
don't
watching
have
what's
high
happening
hopes.
inside. If you think of the community of astrologers, which has grown exponentially since 2018. Since co-star, since amplification of astrology, since social media, you know, it used to be that there were just a handful of astrologers. Now the astrology family is vast. And it's interesting because when we started doing astrology, there's a small selection of books that you could get. Now, when I was at the NORWAC Northwest Astrology Conference this past spring, they have a bookstore. I mean, there were like hundreds if not a
Hmm.
thousand or more books that were
Wow.
written about, my brain could explode. Like I didn't even understand half of the topics that were there. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm like, I can't get that granular into an asteroid, but some people can. I'm more interested in, the 10 planets, a few asteroids, the nodes, and then like what's going on planet Earth. But there's all these different branches. There's Hellenistic, there's medieval astrology, there's, traditional, modern, just, your head would spin, and it's great.
Everything has gotten
However,
complexified.
there is now this schism, I would say, going on, and it's very generationally divided. Uh, Old school astrologers, Lynn Bell, Demetra George, Anne Ortley, Stephen Forrest, who lit the match, basically, are all aligning on one side, uh, calling for, minimizing the damage of Stephen Forrest's racist remarks, and even calling for this astrology conference, which asked him not to speak, to issue a formal apology to him. And then on the other side are
And
mostly younger or Gen X, millennial, Gen Z astrologers who are like, no, we're not okay. You're not going to get away with just sweeping it under the rug and not doing the repair work. So,
the self-education and the
right.
listening and the inconvenient things you've never been asked to do before, it seems. So, and I want to point out that it's been minimized and dismissed, the use of the N word, um, by Stephen Forrest, as oversensitivity, cancel culture, a woke mob. Those are some of the terms that are being thrown around, as though it's this antiquated word that we should just take. What are we so upset about? It's 2026. Meanwhile, there have been murders of African Americans and deaths, terrible ones that are triggering. So I'm not going to go into the specifics because we don't want to trigger anyone, but Nolan Wells and Josiah Fortune. And there's been, let's just say, deaths, mysterious deaths, quote unquote, or deaths of people that were not helped by the police or law enforcement or authorities, even after asking, that are hearkening back to times when that word and the Ku Klux Klan, which was brought up on that podcast, were just
Out in the open,
out in the open
openly.
and running rampant and unregulated. And
And the death of Josiah Fortune in Mississippi, which does not have an anti-lynching law. It's still
oh my
not,
God.
yeah, that it's the only state I think that hasn't passed it. Um, and Nolan Wells, as well as in Mississippi. The fact that that's happening alongside, these minimizing racist conversations. Now, you said you listened to a really good podcast, and we'll drop the link in that Sam Reynolds was on. He's an African American astrologer and scholar and friend
Yeah,
of ours. Yep.
it was a great podcast. It was done in response to what's going on. It's called Racism, Bigotry, and Dismissal in the Astrology Community. And the host, whose handle is Spiritual Gangsta Certified, she had Sam Reynolds, Ra Aku, aka Cosmo Physics, and Jovi Saturn. They had a really great conversation that you know, my take on it was like, this is unfair that they should have to do additional unpaid labor to educate the world and process, um, what was what they shouldn't have to
about
process. Here,
why they were harmed
yeah,
by
and
the
yeah,
racism going on in the
yeah.
astrology
And
community.
while I'm sure it was comforting for them to come together and talk, uh, they should never have had to have that conversation. Like I just it's like, what if Black astrologers could teach, and it didn't have to be teaching people how not to be racist? What if it could be like everyone else, teaching about their area of expertise without having to be burdened with that job? That's my vision, my utopian
Well,
vision
here's
for the
Venus
world.
and Libra coming in with equity. We've, interestingly enough, never been invited to speak at a single astrology conference, met people who run them, even applied, suggested some topics, and we just get just the
Crickets, yeah.
crickets. We've been cast as merely sun sign astrologers to some, or I have no
Magazine
idea.
horoscope
Right.
writers, which we are proudly,
Proudly,
because that's
but
people's first point of contact sometimes,
yeah.
who can't afford an astrology conference ticket or
Most
aren't at
people
that
don't
level.
care if you're a medieval astrologer or a modern astrologer or if you do horary. They just are like, I'm a Virgo. What does that mean? And
Right.
our interest is in accessible, open. The stars belong to no one. They've been named by every culture since the Babylonians and the Chaldeans and the Egyptians, the Sumerians. Everyone had names for the stars, but no one owns the stars. And so,
Hmm.
my experience of astrology conferences is that there's always a lot of great stuff to learn, but they're very elite, very closed off, they're inaccessible, and also very white dominated, white male dominant.
And if
Even
not white dominated, the Western or Greek or Hellen, a lot of the subject matter is very Eurocentric. And what's I was just saying, it's like it kind of brings in some of the worst of some of the institutions that a lot of people well, I'll just say this. There is room for a lot of scholarship around astrology that for like some of the nerdy types of people that are attracted to it, ourselves included, there's so much to learn. And you can really research and go deep and learn so much about history through the lens of astrology, which I love. I love astrology has made mathematicians and historians out of people who never watched the news and hated math class. I'm being a little flip here, but it's given a framework for people to feel comfortable. Like they weren't going to be like a lot of women, frankly. As I've been working on our human design course, there is a decent amount of math in a couple of the lessons where there's everything gets measured down to precise degrees. And I acknowledge that people might have math class trauma in that lesson, especially women. I mean, even Tali was one of the top students in our high school calculus class and was supposed to go to a math competition. It was her and it was
that's
the
right.
top five students, I think, were supposed to be picked. And she was one of them. And the teacher skipped over her and picked the next boy
Yeah.
student to go to the contest. Like literally just, and I don't,
It was
for
actually
whatever
to
reason,
go
we
and
didn't
visit
fight it.
engineering schools in
Oh,
northern
wow.
Michigan. So it was even worse than a competition. It was university programs for engineers. It was like, well, maybe
Wow.
I would have been an engineer,
We
but
came close. We both came close to going to engineering school from our grandfather's encouragement to our awesome female chemistry teacher, Judy Corsini, who
yeah.
really wanted us to go into STEM, go into space camp. So I just want to preface what I'm saying about like, this is a place, this is what is so actually maybe heartbreaking for people that do go to these conferences to have this happening in that world. We're not part of it. That doesn't matter fully. But just that might be a place that they actually belonged and felt like they could have these conversations and go and be publicly smart and seen for
Well,
it.
having gone to a few of them, there's been a little bit of an effort of inclusivity. Sam Reynolds has gone out of his way, but he's kind of like, the person who's really leading the charge. But it's like when I was at NORWAC this year, the majority of the speakers were white men. There were only a couple of, and women, a few women too, but it was like, there were very little BIPOC representation, and the conferences are organized, at
Yeah,
the
they were talking
leadership.
about that
Yeah, and
on YouTube.
I'm personally sick of sitting in classrooms that are just taught from the white perspective. I mean, it's just, come on, there's so many astrologers of color, so many female astrologers, so many astrologers who don't fit the astrology conference mold or who are there at the conferences but haven't been extended the opportunities of a book deal or
Yeah.
so this is where there's a lack of equity. And so this is all to say that Venus, because it's connecting to Pluto and Aquarius, a sign of astrology, Uranus, the planet
Mhm.
that rules astrology, and is opposing Neptune. So it's far away from so we're getting a real clear view of the illusions in all of our communities and all of
Yeah.
our, where there's, and then comes the question of how to address it because, because Stephen Forrest has kind of doubled and tripled down on defending himself and saying, I'm not a racist. And if you believe that, you can basically F off, which is like
He's
the
made it
worst
personal.
possible
Yeah.
way you can handle it. It's like, let me sit down, what I think he should have done. And like, I want to repair this. Let me come to you humbly with my heart in my hand and say, like, what can I do? Please, like, let me make this right. Not like I have a black friend, Ricky Williams, therefore I am not racist.
On the podcast with Janae Jones, and Sam Ra and Jovi Saturn, they were talking about that. They were like, what, people are saying, what can they do? And I don't, again, it's like so often it becomes the burden of Black people to teach white people how not to be racist. So, I think that for my opinion, for like maybe Steven's next move is just stop talking and go educate
Read White
yourself.
Fragility, because this is a
Right.
classic case of white
It really
fragility,
is.
like
And they
pearl
were,
clutching kind of
yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, they
Hmm.
were talking about like, I mean, I think like go learn from Black astrologers if buy their programs and courses or watch their YouTube, subscribe. There's so many ways, just like don't look at them as like what they're going to teach you about is anti-racism work. Look at their astrology work and I mean, if they have anti-racist resources, great for sure. They're probably from a more, not
You
what.
just connected with a great human design astrologer.
Yeah, yeah, amazing. His name is Dewan Cornish. I found him, and we can share his Instagram handle. And he has 20 years of studying uh, in-depth human design, knows it at the level of the the design crystals, the genetic codons that go along with each of the gates,
Yeah,
the
we need
I
to do some work
Ching.
with him.
Yeah, no, we are. Yeah, he and I have been chatting. So it was fun. I reached out. I didn't even know who I was going to be reaching out to. I just found the author and I reached out and we found out we actually are like inside out twins of each other because he's born on June 1st and we're born on December 2nd. So in human design, we literally have the same four
Incarnation
main,
cross.
yeah, the same one. So now we've taken to calling each other inside out twins, and we're definitely going to be doing some things together because he's incredible knowledge. Simply not looking at a Black astrologer and going, oh, I wonder what they can teach me about anti-racist work. What can they teach you about astrology? Just like it's so radically unradical just to just be peers or be a student of theirs and take some of the pressure off of Sam Reynolds too, because he keeps
Good
being asked to be
God.
the. He was sharing about how when he went to his first astrology conference, he was the only black person there, and he was sharing openly that he's short. He's 4'11". Those are his words. And he was in an elevator with four white women, and one of them immediately clutched her purse. And he said they later became friends, but that always stayed with him. And he was saying that there are like 13 black speakers at the UAC conference that's coming up this time. And he's actively worked to create that. So,
Right.
we don't want to erase the progress he's made, but it's also that's being erased by the devolving into just it's getting worse and worse and worse by the second, the splitting. And I don't know if I'll make it to an astrology conference at this rate. Well, this is a timely moment to actually share. So we did our yearly for the fourth year in a row 8-8 Lionsgate ritual. And whether you think the Lionsgate is a bunch of BS or not, because of the astronomy, it's a moment where people come together in the numerology of it. It's a powerful moment to come together. And I think any day that people come together to create high vibration intentions can be revered as a as a moment. So can be treated like a special moment. So we had about 600 people that we did our Astro Tarot Lionsgate live ritual with. We revealed the theme and cover of our 2027 horoscope book, and we put our manifestation bundle on sale for $88. It's the best price that we ever have. It's become how we announce it every year. But Tali came up really almost psychically, as she often does, with the theme. It turned out to be really on point. So you want to
Yeah, that
share
was a
about that,
few,
Tali?
yeah, like 3 months ago. Well, as we every year we look at the, numerology, the Chinese lunar astrology, as well as, of course, all the planets, and then kind of try to distill it into an overarching theme. So 2027, drum roll please, is going to be the year of the looking glass. A looking
Mm.
glass is a fancy Alice in Wonderland way of saying mirror. Um, and there's a few reasons we chose it. There's a lot of interactivity going on next year with this minor grand trine that's already active now. Venus is hitting it with Pluto, Uranus, and Neptune forming this. Basically, it looks like a low pyramid in the skies if you were to connect their position. So there's a lot of movement. So we're all going to be like looking at each other, but it is an 11-2 year in numerology. So two is a sign of relationships, but because it's an 11 year, there's like this looking within. So it's like reflect to connect is essentially a way of saying that we have to,
Mm.
in order to connect to others, we need to look in the mirror ourselves, which, hello, what's happening right now in the whole, with this astrology community, with the world at
So many
large, with
communities, so many communities.
politics, like, so there's been, it's also the year of the fire sheep. We have this year's year of the fire horse. Horse is a lot like Gemini. So it's let's argue, let's get into it, let's gallivant. And the sheep is like Cancer. It's a moon ruled year. So it's kind of also about finding our flock, but not becoming sheeple in the process. So the year of the looking glass, make friends with your mirror. Let people reflect back to you, mirror each other. That's one of the core principles of, nonviolent communication is before you start defending and responding to kind of go into what I hear you saying is the mirroring technique of like reflecting people back, just saying, I hear you, I get you, I hear where you're coming from, which is very hard to do in triggering situations like that. But it is,
And when you add in the power differential of race. It's
gender, class,
yeah, it's like there are
all of
people
the
who
things.
have never been asked to do that. I mean, to deconstruct that. I mean, we've been reckoning with that as Jews ourselves for the last 3 years and just like figuring out what our identity is and how to keep the best parts of it while also dismantling and examining the things that maybe we didn't choose or weren't even alive when they were created, but that we are still, we still need to see another view, the looking, so that it's like
Yeah.
looking at the you could say privileges, advantages, or
Oh my God. It's been a big, like, whoa, here we are, granddaughters of Holocaust survivors, and the government of this country that saved our families' lives, literally, is committing what's defined as a genocide. And
and then
then we have
looking deeper
family
into
at
the
is in
roots.
Israel too, who we love, and they know nothing else but Israel. And we're not going to reject them as our relatives, but we are going to have to figure out how to talk to them about it. And it's just a lot. It's a lot of mirror work. It's like I understand when people say, that when people are anti-Zionist, they're saying they're anti the apartheid government of Israel. But when I hear people say Zio, it feels like a dog whistle. Like it's now become like those Zios. And it's like,
Said so
it hits like
casually.
a knife as a Jewish person because we were all taught that, Zion and Jerusalem are in our ancient texts. We've had these words and prayers in go back to the Torah scrolls from thousands of years ago. You'll see Zion and
Sion, yeah.
yeah, or people saying you're not really Jewish because your skin is white. It's like, well, so it's just there's a lot of history that I still need to learn about our own history. So I will be trying to have Mars and Cancer conversations with our parents who are deeply knowledgeable about the history of Jews before Israel and beyond. Our mom's a rabbi. So it's like, how do you sit with, not rejecting your culture and family while also rejecting what is being done in the name of your culture and family. So it's a real this is what we're all sitting with like right now, these and every, it's scary to even say that
In a
because
public space. I mean, I think this was like
yeah. Well, and it is even scary to say that because there is so much harm being done in Gaza right now. And so it could be heard of as a defense. And I'm talking about the pain, of having to live in these dual realities of,
and there are people that are traumatized, people of all cultures, not just Jewish,
just
who were
all, yeah.
there that were traumatized by October 7th. And then there are people who are traumatized and enduring genocide after
Mhm.
October 7th. And it's become this competition between the two too. And it's just, you know what, I don't even want to say anything else about it because we're in the midst of our own deconstruction, self-education, research, and we don't want to not acknowledge that because when people say nothing, you don't know where they stand. And we stand with humanity
Mhm.
and also learning the history. How did it end up here? Ra mentioned Septimus Severus on the podcast. Very knowledgeable, the podcast we've been talking about history and
The
very
Janae Jones, right?
African, yeah,
Yeah.
the Janae Jones podcast. Very knowledgeable about like the African roots of astrology and that Africans taught it to the Greeks and Romans. And Septimus Severus was an African emperor of Rome. So I went and was like, oh, interesting. Like I'm looking forward to like learning from Ra now that I know of him. He said he was 60 years old. So he must be a fire horse. And but I went and looked up Septimus Severus and I was like, he was a Roman emperor, but also waged a genocide against the Scots. Now I have to do the research on that, but I'm like,
Boy,
okay, there is
no getting around
no getting around that people in
power.
power,
Yeah.
yeah, have done terrible things to other humans throughout history. And I'm just like, we can't revise history. And I don't want to revise history, which is why that's all I'm going to say about our culture or anyone else's. It's just like it's like every time I try to research, I'm like, okay, this really requires a lot of, so full
As
circle back
Lord
that it's,
Acton said, absolute power corrupts absolutely,
yeah,
so.
yeah. So, I mean, it's that is what is where we're at with this Venus, the trines and the opposition to the outer planets. Like you pull one thread and the whole sweater unravels right now. And
Pretty
that's
much.
par for the course with an eclipse, total solar eclipse in Leo this Wednesday, August 12th, the first one we've had since 2017 to 19 were the Leo Aquarius eclipses. So total solar eclipse in Leo. Um, and it's a time to look in the mirror, look at our reflections, look at who we think we are, the ego part of the ego, the shadow ego part of Leo, which is who we think we are based on external trappings versus who we are at the soul level. And just, I always think at a total solar eclipse, because it's a new moon, that's a time to have beginner's mind to it takes a lot of courage and strength to say I don't know, I don't know who I am. It's like it's very unsettling for a lot of people, and it's not even a question that someone who isn't at their emotional or mental best should engage with sometimes without having proper support, because it can really upend you and make you feel like, what am I anchoring myself with on this planet? So
Well,
the eclipse comes
yeah.
along and shakes that up. So now
There was an earthquake literally in Western
yeah.
Colombia with a death toll that's rising, which is really
My
sad. And then
goodness.
Puerto Rico is having a water crisis. Like sometimes around
Yeah, they
eclipses,
finally
there could
had
be,
rain,
oh, they
so
did. I
but
feel like
that
there's
doesn't
weather events that sometimes really kind of correspond with eclipse
Hurricane
seasons.
Sandy. I remember New York came with the Taurus Scorpio eclipses in 2012. So, yeah, eclipses do often bring weather events. They affect the oceans and everything. So, um, yeah. So our
Well,
our
this is
prayers go to Colombia for sure, and for all of us here, like this is a moment to really do some of that work. Now, I think this is also a great time to talk about the Leo total solar eclipse that's happening a year from now, the second one, August 2nd, 2027, because we've been talking about this and dangling it, but we
mm,
are formally inviting you to join us at the Total Solar Eclipse Conference in Luxor, Egypt. We have been invited to speak at this conference with an Egyptologist, archaeologist, and astrophysicist. It's going to be the end of July until August 4th next year, where we will get to together witness the total solar eclipse that is going to reach totality. It's also a super moon over Hatshepsut, the female pharaoh of the 18th dynasty, over her mortuary temple in Luxor, Egypt. Now, this is an amazing uh, trip that's being put together by an incredible Leo woman, Terry, who and her company Power Places. She's been doing tours through Egypt for the last 40 years and so spiritual, so knowledgeable, and just also really knows Egypt and has a lot of good connections with the government, etc. So it's safe. It's all five-star luxury, comfortable. It's going to be very hot in August in Egypt. And so we're going to share the link, 2027 totalsolareclipse.com. It's not cheap, but it's the eclipse of the century. And if it's been a dream of yours to witness one, go to Egypt, hang out with us, not necessarily in that order, haha. We will be there the whole time. We're going to be giving a talk as well, and there will be guided tours during the cooler hours, the morning hours. So all the protections against the heat are in place as well, staying in
And we
five-star
should say that
hotels.
we are not the organizers of the tour,
Yeah.
but we will be there, and whoever comes from our, world will definitely be making time to
Yeah, we'll
hang
be
out with
doing something
you and
special for you
absolutely,
guys too.
yeah. So, and I know a few people already are coming from our
Yeah,
universe,
yeah,
and
we
so
just
we're excited about
announced
that.
it at our 8/8
So
tarot
all the
ritual
details you can get
at
at
2027 totalsolareclipse.com. With the book, the 2027 horoscope book, I mentioned the manifestation bundle. So every year on 8/8 is when we officially put the next year's book on sale at the best possible price. So our manifestation bundle, which includes the big book with all 12 signs, your sign or whichever sign, individual sign. We have the smaller books, the daily horoscope guides. Um, you get the paperback of both of those. You get the digital edition of the big book as well. Our tote, which is the Strength Tarot card with an Egyptian theme. You're going to get a ticket to our webinar that we do every year in January, our live masterclass, Planet by the Planets. You're going to get our crystal of the year and also our digital hotspots calendar. A lot of you guys love those. With the touch of a button, you get to populate your iCal or Google Cal with every single transit that we mention in the book, from Venus changing signs to full and new moons and eclipses to various, whatever we talk about on the podcast, the transits of the week will all be in your calendar reminding you. You can go to the book and refer and learn what they mean. So, our manifestation bundle, offering it at our lowest price for a limited time, $88. And if you're, it also means that you're first in line for when we start to ship them out for the holidays. So everyone who orders now gets theirs first. For years, people have been gifting these. So, great gifts as well. You can order multiple if you think it's the gift you want to give someone else. Get one for yourself, for your friends. And yeah, that's
we'll have that
at
open until August 28th, the end of the eclipse corridor. So at that,
astrostyle.com/manifest is where it is.
yes. And speaking of the eclipse corridor, let's just talk a little bit about that and then do human design for you guys. So,
Hmm.
eclipse corridor, what does that mean? So, eclipses always arrive in pairs, just so you know. One comes with the new moon and then the next full moon, or vice versa. It starts with the full moon, then 2 weeks later, there's a new moon. So, those 2 weeks in between a solar eclipse in this case, which is a new moon, always is a solar eclipse, to the lunar eclipse, which is always a full moon, in this case, a Pisces full moon, is really like you're in the crucible. You're in this energy. So it's a bit like a retrograde, but it's a little more, spiritual. Like I feel like retrogrades, Mercury retrogrades at least, tend to mess with the 3D world. It's interesting that this whole, shift is happening with the leading up to the UAC United Astrology conferences on September 4th. But these 2 weeks, astrologers from every side of the political spectrum, including the keynote, who's Chani Nicholas, who's very much on the social justice side of things, versus, her own teacher, Demetra George, who's in the Stephen Forrest defense camp, are going to have to figure out how this conference is going to go. They're going to have
Yeah.
to go into these places that are super uncomfortable, probably because they're going to have to confront personalities and friendships and so like this is just kind of a micro, it's like this is going to happen in everyone's lives where we may have to go into some uncomfortable places and nuances and listen to people we'd rather, kill off and not deal with, and it's like nothing is going to be what it seems, especially because it's starting with this total solar eclipse in Leo, which is dramatic and throwing your power around and making these bold statements, and then ending
Yeah.
in Pisces or the Pisces full moon, which does rule compassion, but also illusion. And the Pisces eclipse is going to be an interesting date. That's on the 28th of August. It's a full moon. I got married during a Pisces full moon, and boy, what a bad idea that was because there was a lot of like, even though it was a wedding was incredible in some ways, there was just a lot of personality explosions that
Oh,
happened there.
yeah.
Won't harken back to that, but I was like, what? I
We
should
were
have known
young.
better. I should have
We were
known better. It was
young
burning. I got married at Burning Man. So there you go.
under a Pisces full moon.
Yeah,
So,
I
yeah, if
know.
you know
What?
anything about astrology, you know that's a risky move,
Oh
but
my God. There was just a lot of like energy there. We should have danced. We should have danced.
mm,
Anyways, I digress. So this Pisces full moon, which is a lunar eclipse, is also the last. We've had a series of Pisces eclipses that started in September 2024. This is the last one. There's one more in the series on Virgo, Pisces opposite signs, the next February 20th. And then we're done, which is interesting because February 20th of this year, we had a Saturn Neptune conjunction where Saturn and Neptune met at 0 degrees Aries, which is the very beginning of the zodiac, the Aries point, which has not happened since 4361 BC.
hmm.
4361
I like
BC.
the exact.
I
Did Rick
got that
Levine
from
give
Rick
you that?
Levine.
Yeah, give
Yeah,
you the
yes,
exact year.
he did.
This is what I
So,
mean about astrologers being really scholarly sometimes. Like
yeah,
we
and
will
but
dig,
we will dig. I was like, oh,
whether for
thank
good or
you.
bad. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that was writing was still about 1100 years away then. There was no writing, so there's no record, but there was the use of metallurgy then. Just to
Hmm.
say how rare that is. Like there was no bronze. There was trading through the seas, but it was like, China, they were growing millet. Egypt was pre-dynastic. There were no pyramids there. Um, no pharaohs, nothing like that.
Hmm.
Mesopotamia was first inventing cities. Southern Iraq had irrigation canals and temple platforms and mass-produced pottery. So it was such a so like this year an event happened with Saturn, the planet of structure, Neptune, the planet of spirit, coming together at 0 degrees Aries, February 20th. I mean, it blows my mind when I think about and we like literally the world as we know it is changing. And so, we're all lost a little bit as to what's coming. And so I'm not surprised that all this everything that we know. So here we are, this Pisces eclipse, is like the second to last in a series that ends basically a year after all of that Saturn, Neptune. Anyways, I digress, but there are the eclipse is going to be squaring Uranus and Gemini. So it's like, what's everybody saying? What are the new conversations? Is there a way to find any kind of parity, or are we going to just like keep going around in circles? Gemini ruling communication. That
Hmm.
same day, because it's a full moon, the sun and moon are opposite each other. The Virgo sun is forming what's called a yod, the finger of God, which is this triangle formation, kind of like a witch's hat. The Virgo sun is at the apex, the tip of it, and it's angling Pluto in Aquarius, and Neptune in Aries. So, it's like, what are the new rules, boundaries that could be written? What are the ethics that are going to arise from that? What are we all going to agree on a kind of a principle of right and wrong that is, so I'm just,
Hmm.
the next month
That would
is
be nice. I
really,
doubt that'll ever happen, but
well, I mean,
there may be some new well, the code of ethics may be updated in a few communities, let's just say.
yeah, or just, yeah, I think so. It's like it could either turn into like circular conversations. I think it'll almost be both. Like there may be some people who are like, we're going to splinter off and do our own thing somewhere else. And then there will be people who are like, maybe even doubling down on their righteousness too could happen. But,
Even more than they already are.
micro communities are bound to emerge during
And
this
that's what we talked
Aquarius
about
North
in our
node.
book. Yeah,
Yeah, the
and with
Great
also
Compression, right?
yeah. Oh, yeah, it's true. Yeah, we call the Aquarius North Node the Great Compression, that things would start getting smaller. And I didn't think it was going to show up as that, although we did talk about that with Uranus and Gemini too. Gemini being the localized. So people may really choose to be in smaller spaces where they know, I mean, it's everything is a double-edged sword, the duality of everything. It's like on the one hand, it's like, okay, that's understandable and has a lot of positive things to it, like taking, not having to go into unsafe spaces, but it can also turn into echo chambers if we're not careful about it too. Like it's sad that that has to happen instead of because people can't have a conversation with each other. Difficult. So, one of the cards I pulled in our Astro Tarot spread yesterday, or sorry, on 8/8, was the Five of Wands reversed. The Five of Wands is a mock battle. It's like people fighting with their sticks with each other. Um, and that made me think about social media because people love, what would you call them, keyboard warriors. Like I know, like
Mm-hmm.
I can be a keyboard warrior. It's like you can say almost anything to anyone. And I had the Five of Wands reversed in a position that indicated, that there's a need for people who know how to actually do like what nonviolent communication facilitators can do, help us talk to each other and hear each other, because we can splinter into small groups for safety, especially if harmful things are being said. Nobody should have to endure that, but
Mm-hmm.
that's not the answer. That's a treatment, not a solution. So, but of course, everybody has to be willing to do that in order for it to work. So that's where we are, and maybe that is a good time to bring us to this week's Human
I
Design
think
Gate.
so. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so every 5-ish days, the sun moves into a set of degrees of a zodiac sign that aligns with one of the 64 I Ching hexagrams and human design gates that share uh, a number and a message. So we last week was from August 5th to 11th. And so it's still probably, if you're listening to this, maybe it's still there. The sun was in gate 7, which is called the army in the I Ching, or leadership. So it's about, a lot of the I Ching is about something very similar to Kabbalah, which is interesting because human design uses both the I Ching and Kabbalah, it uses, and the Hindu Brahmin chakra system and astrology. So it's very multicultural, multidisciplinary. So um, both Kabbalah and the I Ching have a similar message about, in the I Ching, they call it the sage, and sometimes in Kabbalah too, which is like to kind of finding your inner sage and taking the path of the sage instead of being reactive. It's
Mm.
both of them are kind of like a reminder to humans that our wiring is reactive and can do great harm. It's always great misfortune will come if you choose this path instead of the one of the sage. I've been reading all these different I Ching texts and really loving them. But like that's the general wisdom. So, last week was about what is a leader. A leader isn't someone who just goes out and wins on the battlefield. They win on the inner battlefield with themselves and their egos and their temperament, which is perfect for a gate that lines up with Leo. And then from August 11th to 16th, we have the sun in gate 4, which is the gate of formalization or answers, is the human design name, but the I Ching hexagram is called youthful folly. So I wanted to actually
Mm.
read this from the Divination Foundation because I think it's a great message, especially with the solar eclipse in Leo, which is also the sign of the child and childhood, childlike wonder, but also brattiness sometimes. So
Hmm.
um, this is what it says: be on guard for the careless or rebellious attitudes. And this is within yourself, not just others. So already we're in like a preview of the year of the looking glass, too. So everything we say
Yeah.
about others, we need to also self-examine too. We don't
Yeah.
need, it's advised to, I guess. So be on guard for the careless or rebellious attitudes characteristic of inexperience. Just as a youth requires instruction, this is a good time to focus on learning lessons from a patient teacher or from life experience. Is there a circumstance in your life that you failed to comprehend, perhaps because you didn't appreciate its inherent complexities? Be respectful of
Mm.
anything or anyone who has something to teach you right now. Now, I want to say this is not about elders because a lot of the people, we keep hearkening the astrology community, but it's provided such a
It
clear
really has.
example of the energy that's happening everywhere. You know, it's just because someone is older doesn't mean they're wiser. What if we all adopt this youthful thought? We can all be children. We all are, have something to learn. So if you're focusing on a relationship, ask yourself which of you is currently the student and which of you is the sage. If you're a parent,
Mm.
ask yourself who is being the teacher, my child or me. I actually have experienced that with my daughter over the last week, too. This is from the Divination Foundation, divination.com.
Mm.
Um, and it says, in order to be ready for challenging times, let education be an ongoing part of your life. Develop the
Wow.
necessary mindset and willpower to carry you through confusing times. The wise realize that experience, especially difficult experience, is a most powerful teacher, but we cannot be forced to learn, even from experience. Be the humble student who delights in learning, the one who nourishes an expanding awareness. So I love the way they wrote that. I'm going to have to look into who's behind divination.com. But that I feel like just the energy of that kind of wisdom elevates me immediately because that it's equal opportunity. It's like every one of us can tap into the sage within us. Some of us have a lot more obstacles to that are unfairly put on us. So I'm not saying it's easy. If you've been wronged and harmed on multiple levels, with if you're a black queer woman, for example, like trans, disabled, etc. On top of you've got they talked about that on Janae's podcast too, like how many rungs of the ladder, to hell you have to climb out of hell you have to climb up from,
I'm
depending
looking
on where you're
forward to
coming
listening
from.
to
So,
that.
yeah,
We'll put the
it's
link in here along with
yeah,
all the
definitely.
others.
Yeah. So it's just, but we can all be students. And that's why, I think from the astrology community to sort of the marketing communities and all these people that we've learned from, I'm just noticing the stubborn resistance to evolve and this doubling down on using old techniques. Or now, like a lot of the telltale sign for me is a lot of these people who have like, I built my business and now I'm using AI so that I can set up my work day and work 4 hours. That's like this almost clueless cheerleading of AI. It's like, great, you've got Claude doing everything for you, and you have not acknowledged any of the drawbacks of this. So, like, from leadership, the gate of the army and leadership to the gate of youthful folly and answers. It's called formalization and answers in human design because I think it's about when you're formalizing, you're taking in information. It's in the ajna, which is the thinking, rational, quote unquote, part of the brain, also the
Hmm.
third eye. So it's about insight as well as critical thinking. And clearly we need some of that this week. So especially as
Boy,
the
do we
eclipse
ever.
kind of like
Mm.
blows everything open. So, the week ends with Mercury and Jupiter coming together in Leo. So hopefully some big, bold, honest, but heartfelt and loving conversations. Leo rules the heart and spine. It is about love and courage and its highest vibrations. So here's to more of that.
More
And
of that, please. Yes.
so go grab your manifestation bundle, check out Egypt. If you're curious about our human design for astrologers program, it is well underway. About half of it is already released, and people are enjoying it and learning from it and learning about themselves. That's human design for astrologers.com. I'd love to have you in all of those, any of those, and just here with us. So thanks for being part of our universe once again this week, and we'll see you on the other side of the eclipse.
Thanks for tuning in to Astro Twins Radio. If today's episode gave you an aha moment, we'd be over the moon if you left us a 5-star review. It helps fellow astrology lovers find us. And make sure to hit subscribe and follow us on iTunes and Spotify so you never miss an episode. Want the full visual experience? You can also watch the video version on our YouTube at AstroTwins-TV. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at AstroTwins and head over to astrostyle.com to read your free daily, weekly, and monthly horoscope that we write for you with love. Until next time, move with intention and let the universe meet you there.